Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'll be reviewing for you Rift of the NecroDancer for the Nintendo Switch. I really love rhythm games. One of the best examples of that insane love of that genre is one time I went to the arcade and I spent $10 worth of quarters on the Dance Dance Revolution machine. I got through maybe $8 worth of those quarters before I started hyperventilating, and so the arcade staff had to take me off the machine, get me a drink of water, and say, "We appreciate your patronage, but we don't want you to hurt yourself playing our games." And so I love Theatrhythm, I love Cadence of Hyrule, which, fun fact, was made by the same developers that made this game, as well as Crypt of the NecroDancer, which Cadence of Hyrule was originally supposed to be DLC for. So for those of you that haven't played Crypt of the NecroDancer, it's basically a roguelike that you play to the rhythm of the music, and then Cadence of Hyrule was of course a Zelda-ified version of that formula. And so Rift of the NecroDancer attempts to take the same general art style and characters and music composition style, but make it into a full-fledged rhythm game. And for the most part, I think that it was an admirable attempt. So the basic gist of the gameplay is that it's kind of like Guitar Hero in the sense that you have 3 different buttons that you can push at the bottom of the screen, which correspond to either one of the face buttons or a direction on the control stick, or at least that's what I put it as. The game defaults to using the control pad, which feels very weird for a rhythm game, but oh well. And your job is to hit the monsters as they show up at the bottom of the screen on time to the music. And there's quite a lot more to it than that. Like, for example, if the monster's shape underneath it is, for example, a star or a diamond, then the monster will be slightly offbeat. Different colors of monsters will take different strategies to hits. There's also food items that if you hit them, they will restore your health, but you only have 10 hit points before you'll have to start the song all over again. However, to compensate, the food items appear relatively often, and if you hit enough yellow monsters and food in a row, then you will get Rift Power. You can carry up to 2 lightning bars worth of Rift Power, and if you activate it, it's essentially like the Star Power in Guitar Hero, where it doubles the amount of points you earn, as well as makes you invincible, so it's good to use it on sets of monsters that you think you'll have a relatively difficult time with, or in an instance where you can just hit a bunch of monsters in a row and really rack up points. At first, this gameplay was somewhat counterintuitive to me, as there were times where I would have to hit 2 monsters at once, and because I wasn't playing something like Guitar Hero or DDR, I was like, how do I adjust moving one hand in different directions? It turns out that if you have to hit 2 monsters at once, you have to press one of the directions on the control stick and the other on the face buttons, which sounds easy in practice, but try doing that to the rhythm of the music, and I guarantee you might find it hard as well. Additionally, if all 3 of the icons at the bottom of the screen are filled up by monsters, then you simply tap the control stick downward, because there is no button for a downward input. And again, this sounds simple in practice, but trying to do it to the rhythm of the music and keeping track of all of the enemy patterns and trying to figure out when to use your Rift Power can be a bit of a challenge. Admittedly, a little bit too much of a challenge for my liking. Honestly, I played most of this game on the easiest difficulty, which is a rarity for me, because usually I try to go pretty difficult on these rhythm games. I know I'm usually the type of person that plays on easy mode whenever I can, but in rhythm games I like to challenge myself. Not in this game. There's just way too much to keep track of, and even some of the easy mode songs I struggled with. Now, to break up the what might seem like repetitive gameplay, there is a story mode that gives a narrative justification for why you are playing the guitar and what is the point of all these rifts appearing, and you'll get to see characters from throughout Cadence of Hyrule, and it's alright. It feels like the story was kind of cobbled together as an excuse to put all these songs together so that it's not like, hey, this is just a music set piece and we'll call it a day. I still appreciate the story mode existing, because one cool thing that it does, well actually 2, is that sometimes it'll have different styles of music games to make sure that you're not just doing the same thing over and over again. For example, sometimes you'll do challenges, which are basically like Rhythm Heaven minigames, where instead of just hitting the monsters to the beat, you have to do various other tasks. Like the first challenge is a yoga minigame, where you have to stretch in the right direction, or a breathing minigame, and these are pretty fun. They are quite strict with the timing, but it is very nice to master these, and it is great that the game is showing a bit more variety and perhaps giving us a tease for how Rhythm Heaven Groove will turn out whenever that comes out. There's also boss battles, which play out kind of like Punch-Out, where you're in an over-the-shoulder perspective, and you have to hit the directional buttons in time with the on-screen prompts to dodge the enemy attacks. And then once you hit the boss, then if you hit the prompts on time with the music, then you can deal some damage. But if you get hit by an attack or hit the boss at the wrong time, then you'll have time added to the clock, because the less time you take, the more points you'll get and the better rank you'll achieve. These were pretty tough at times, although there was only one boss that I just struggled with so much that the game said, hey, we'll let you skip this and continue the rest of the story, which I did. So maybe that breaks my own rule of having to beat a game first before I review it, but if only one single song and the whole soundtrack I can't beat and I beat all of the others, do you think you can let me fudge the rules just a little bit in this case? Now, the story mode is relatively short, and it doesn't take that long to play through all the songs, so some of you might be thinking, where's the replay value in this game? Well, if the 4 difficulty levels per song still aren't enough for you, you can equip modifiers for each song. For instance, you can trigger the golden lute, which plays the game for you, but you can still decide when you want to do rift power. Seems a bit overpowered for a rhythm game, but if you really like the music, I suppose that's an option. There's also another option that requires you to get a perfect score on every single monster, otherwise you get an insta-kill. You have to collect diamonds in order to do that. As far as I know, you get 2 diamonds for simply beating a song, but you can get up to 3 per song, and I never figured out how to get the 3rd diamond. I did get enough to unlock the insta-kill modifier, but I certainly didn't use it because I am not good at this game. I was good enough to beat it, but not good enough to master it. There are also harder challenges that you can unlock, where you'll have to play each song with other intense modifiers on them, such as one where you only have 1 heart, or another where everything is somewhat obscured by smoke. Again, didn't touch these because they sounded absolutely miserable. There's also a bestiary where you can look at each individual monster, as well as do a specialized tutorial where you can study the patterns of that particular monster, because the tutorial the game actually gives you can be a bit of information overload. So if you're like, well, this one particular monster is giving me trouble, you can do that. There's also, as if this game still doesn't have enough content for you, a remix mode where you can play every song again and therefore have different enemy patterns that are much harder, and there's a leaderboard so you can compete against people all over the world to see who has the best score. Plus, there's a lot of accessibility options, which I did not think were the kind of thing that would be necessary for a rhythm game, but the developers must have figured that all their fancy schmancy special effects would bother certain people. So some of the options would be to have the profile pictures be static instead of having the characters dance to the music, which is something I didn't think was necessary, but now that I think about it, if a rhythm game is willing to have accessibility options, that is very considerate towards players that might otherwise be turned off by this kind of genre. And if that's still not enough, there's also music from other games. You get, I believe it's 3 songs from Super Meat Boy by default, and you can also pay for Celeste music. All of them except for one are ripped straight from the original game. Then you also get a remix of the song Resurrections, and somewhere down the line there will be DLC for more games. They showed off Pizza Tower DLC. I'm personally hoping Deltarune gets in there, but I would imagine it would be quite difficult to get those kinds of characters in the art style of Rift of the NecroDancer. Now, overall, this game has a very okay feeling to it, but what really prevents me from saying that it's a spectacular rhythm game is the fact that I don't really like the music all that much. I know, shocking. A rhythm game with a soundtrack that's only so-so, but I just couldn't really jive with most of the metal tracks in here, and a lot of times I had to turn down my Switch because I was like, oh man, this music is just not to my tastes. Now, I do feel like the enemy patterns, at least in the normal mode, are really well designed, and there is a really satisfying sense of rhythm that you get for hitting them on time with the music. I also like how the mini games are choreographed to the beat of the music really well, and I'm glad that it's a collaborative effort so you can see stuff like Celeste, Super Meat Boy, and Pizza Tower music. I always love it when games branch out and have other franchises included, as I like the idea of different franchises working together instead of competing with each other. But as far as where this falls on my tier list of rhythm games, I don't actually make tier lists, I just couldn't think of what else to say in the moment. This one would definitely be closer to the bottom. However, that doesn't mean I didn't like it. I just think it was alright. It did a decent job of contextualizing why there was a rift on top of the screen and why you were playing these certain songs. And it did an okay job of having narrative justification for why the minigames exist. I appreciate the addition of remix mode so that it essentially doubles the length of the songs, and I also appreciate the challenges and the ability to just have so many different ways of playing the songs, but that doesn't excuse the fact that I just didn't really like the music. Now you might be thinking, how the heck do you make a rhythm game with music that you do like, Paul? And my answer to that is just play Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. That has quite a lot of orchestral pieces, and somehow they still managed to make an appealing rhythm game out of it. Now, I don't really think there's anything the composers could do about it, because this is an indie team, and in fairness, I probably would have liked these better if I was playing, say, Cadence of Hyrule, as I liked that game's soundtrack. But I suppose in a rhythm game, it's harder to appreciate tracks as they are because you're lacking the in-game context for it. And I guess even if I was having a good time with the rhythm, I wasn't having a good time with my ears. But turning down the music in a rhythm game just feels counterintuitive. So I do think that if you like rhythm games, you might like this, but I also think there might be better options on the Switch, especially if you have diverse musical tastes and don't like the kind of stuff that Cadence of Hyrule and Celeste have to offer. I believe this game goes for about $20, and I got it on sale for about $17. And I do feel like that was a decent price for a game with this amount of content, but also with a very simplistic presentation. I think you should consider renting it if it ever comes to GameFly, but if it doesn't, I think a sale will do just fine. Just make sure that you're good at multitasking, and you're good at being able to do two things at once, and that you study up on this style of music and see if it fits your tastes. And don't be an idiot like me and just splurge on all the Celeste DLC before even playing the game. Really figure out if you like the game and then go for it. So with that, thank you very much for watching, my friends. Please let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or what you think of the review. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!